All right, thanks to everybody who's joined, and we'll have people watching this recording afterwards. So I am recording this. I'm Will Masters from Tufts, have the distinct honor and pleasure of running this IMANA Fellowships program. We've been doing it for a while. We have some experience, but there's always new things to learn from each of you. Thanks particularly to Julia, the program coordinator. She will be telling you about the application process in detail. And Haley Perlich, now the administrator of our project, was in Julia's role previously and is very, very familiar with the experience of fellows in terms of the contracting process, the work plan, the applications, all of that we'll be able to discuss in a lot of detail. So to begin, I just want to check our connectivity, make sure we're able to talk with each other. We have 90 minutes scheduled for this, so lots of opportunity to just talk about this program and what it might offer for you. So first of all, below the video screen, you should see, if you move your mouse down, you'll see the participant tab. So please click on the participant list. And what will jump up is the list of all the participants. And below that list of participants, there's a yes or no voting tab, a green check mark for yes, a red X for no. And just please click yes if you can hear me and see clearly the screen, see the participant tab. And there's 22 of you. So I hope all of you are able to click yes, and we'll have a running count and be able to see if anyone doesn't click yes, implying that they're not actually able to hear me now. At the same time, after you've done that, if you could click on the chat icon, you can readily have the chat box either separate or below the participant tab, participant list. And in the chat box, you could just say hello and welcome to let everyone know a little bit about yourself, where you're from. There's no huge rush on that. But when we have the recording, the chat list will be adjacent to the transcript of what we're saying, and also the video of each of us. So if you can enter in the chat box just a little hello from you, your institution, where you're coming from, that would be very nice to have recorded in the chat box. And then you'll be able to use the chat box to write any questions you have, any comments, any thoughts about the program. We'll be able to look at the chat box and use that to guide discussion. And we're a small enough group that you can unmute yourself and talk during the conversation as well. So far, just a few people have typed in the chat box, and 17 of the 24 have clicked yes. I see people who have not clicked yes are maybe a little hard to reach. Julia, could you just send in the chat box, for example, Ebenezer Ansar did not click yes and may not be able to hear us. Olu Fadere also. So if you can hear me, I see Sheila Kilonzi did not click yes. Maybe she can't hear us. And Anna Msingwa also did not click yes. So please click yes if you can hear us. And then maybe, Julia, you could use the chat box and see if that could solve their audio problem. So thanks again for joining us. A few people still are joining now, which is terrific. And of course, people will be able to watch this afterwards. So again, I'm Will Masters, have the privilege, honor, pleasure of administering this program, guiding it from the very beginning. We wrote the proposal to UK Aid in order to do precisely what we're doing now. And we're honored to be renewed to do it for another 4 rounds last year. So this round 6 has the benefit of a lot of experience of previous fellows that we'll be able to talk about today, and also is open to evolving in new directions with the proposals that you'll be sharing with us, I hope, in the coming months. So Julia, the next slide. The next slide gives us a a focus now to ask, what is the aim of this program? What is our scope? What are our goals? So the purpose of this, the reason why the UK government, the British people are funding this effort is, and it's co-funded with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, is to provide agriculture, nutrition, health researchers, so ANH researchers, meaning the Ag Nutrition Health Academy in particular, a group that we'll talk about in a minute. That photograph is all the participants who are managing, directing an ANH Academy meeting in Kathmandu. And we want to support ANH researchers in validating and applying innovative methods and metrics, and I'll talk about exactly what that means in a minute, to measure change and impacts of policy or program interventions in agriculture, nutrition, and health in low and middle income countries. That's our goal. So let me just parse that out a little bit carefully, right? So our goal is to support you, researchers in ag, nutrition, health, to validate and apply, meaning to test whether these metrics are actually valid, actually useful, and apply them to a practical question. They should be a method or metric, meaning some way of measuring and comparing whether things are improving over time, change over time, or are different when there's a particular policy or particular intervention, whether that's a national, state, or local government, whether it's a civil society type intervention, or simply change over time, for example, climate change or demographic change. And then we want to look across the spectrum of food production in agriculture, of food consumption, nutrition, and interaction with disease to get at health. And we're interested in the entirety of all of the lower middle income world, not just specific target countries. So this agenda is remarkably open. It's remarkably curious, flexible, interested in what you're interested in, wanting to know what you want to work on, so that we can make sure that we're supporting, that we're nurturing, that we're developing the talent and the capacities that are often siloed in one part of the agriculture, nutrition, health spectrum. People are in an institution that has a mandate that might be specific to, for example, public health, or specifically related to agricultural production. We want to know where you're coming from, and we want to know where you want to go to. How can we support you in your professional development? Now, our focus is methods and metrics that are measuring something. IMMANA is distinctive in that we're very much focused on how science, how researchers can inform policy. We want to be able to guide the direct actions of governments and international development agencies and civil society in your countries. We want to be able to provide a number that tells people whether their programs are working. We want to provide an index, an indicator, a method to say this is working, or maybe it isn't working, and they need to change the nature of their intervention. So what is that? That's different from normal science. So most research is asking, how does the world work? Can we just describe the world? We're asking, can we measure the world? And that's a very different question. Many of our fellowship inquiries concern some hypothesis test or some method development that isn't about measurement. And we have to say, we're sorry, that's out of scope. That's not our aim. That's not the aim and scope of this project is innovative methods and metrics. In this round, this set of rounds, excuse me, rounds 5 through 8 of the fellowship program, we're particularly interested in validation, because over the past 5 years, during the life of IMMANA, there's been a lot of new methods, many people developing some new way of thinking about measurement, whether it's the water insecurity scale, that corresponds to a food insecurity scale, but asks that about access to water, whether it's our cost of diet metrics that we've been developing at Tufts. Many new kinds of measurement have come into the dashboards and the policy evaluation toolkit to ask whether interventions are working. And what we are now interested in is very much, are these valid? Are the metrics that you're picking up from the literature, do they really work in a different setting for a different population when there's a different intervention? So validation consists of testing a metric in a different context and often gives very interesting insight in itself. We're also very interested in applications where you would say something has been used in one place, I'm going to use it in a different way, and we're going to find out how well it works. So validation application, as well as development of a new metric, are what we're looking for here. So please, in the chat box, while I'm talking, you can introduce yourself if you haven't already, and you can begin to ask questions. You can begin to make comments. We can start having that conversation that we'll have over the next hour and 15 minutes. So what do we offer? How can we support? What do we do to nurture and build your capacities to do this kind of work? It's quite modest, but it's also remarkably generous of the UK government and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to support this program. Remarkably generous in the sense that it's open in its topic and particular geography, but it's quite modest in terms of time duration. It's 12 months only, very short. A year goes by very, very fast. We describe it as a year of transition research. So what this slide, the word I would emphasize here is the word transition. It's a year of research in which you are supported by two mentors. One, what we call the home mentor, meaning where you're coming from, typically your current employer, your previous employer. If you're just out of a PhD, it might be your dissertation advisor. That would be a set of tools that you already have, a mentor relationship that's already supported your work in the past. Then we bring in support for a host mentor. And we use the word host mentor because many, many people are using the fellowship year, to go and get some more data. They're using the fellowship year to go and work in a new place. They're using the fellowship year to go and develop a different method or a different analytical tool to understand the data they already have. So that host mentor in the current COVID pandemic era might not be a place where you actually go physically, but it would be a place where you're learning from and a person who is hosting you in the sense of supporting your career development. It's a year of transition research because the central deliverable for it is one or more manuscripts submitted to a journal within this calendar year that accomplishes our goals of discovering validity and application of new methods. But it's also transition often in terms of the career path that you have. So we're very, very interested and concerned with the job placements that you have. Our criteria of eligibility are, first of all, earned doctorate in any ANH area. So anything to do with agricultural production, nutrition, or health. It could be animal or human health or veterinary health. One of the two mentors has to be physically located in either Africa or Asia. And that's very, very important for ensuring that there's some groundedness in the regions of interest. We, of course, aim for demographic balance, starting with gender balance and open to all gender identities, of course, but aiming primarily for an appropriate balance between men and women. And we are have a particular institutional interest in careers in African and Asian universities. So if you already have an appointment in an African or Asian university, then that is squarely within our aims and scope. If you do not currently have an appointment at a university in Africa and Asia, then it's important to signal in your proposal how your career development will serve the policy and program needs of the target region you're working in. So we do have IMMANA fellows who are in universities and research institutions in the developed world. And it's very clear that their work exists to serve Africa or Asian populations. And we just need to have that spelled out. And of course, it's naturally intrinsically true if your students, if you're teaching in a African or Asian university, then that's squarely our mandate. If you're outside that, please communicate clearly how you're in that. So I hope that this basic structure is clear to you. We're getting a few questions in the chat box. Definitely type as you think. I'll just keep talking and you can type and then we'll have conversation as we proceed. But I do want to just continue with the next slide, Julia, to describe our focus in just a little bit more detail. So those of you who have any experience with the ANH Academy and with the IMMANA project will know a little bit about it. So I'm going to clear the participant tab voting question and ask you to click yes. So below the participant list, click yes if you have attended an ANH Academy meeting. And I see that so far 6 have yes, 9 have yes attended an ANH Academy meeting. You can click no if you haven't. 11, 12, only 5 no's so far. So a clear majority of you have already attended an ANH Academy meeting. And let me just continue that for just a bit longer. So it's now 13 yeses have attended an ANH Academy meeting and 8 no's have not attended. If you have not attended an ANH Academy meeting, please definitely sign up for the ANH Academy as a member of the Academy. The majority of ANH Academy members have not physically been to a meeting. They have participated in the online forums, and the ANH Academy, which is supported by this IMMANA project that provides the secretariat for the Academy, is now redoing the website and will have a very, very rich environment for people to collaborate on the kinds of work that we're talking about now. So it's very important for this IMMANA Fellowship Program to be, first of all, about identifying, selecting, and supporting the fellows, but also building this broader community that's in the ANH Academy. So Julia, actually, if you could just type into the chat box a link for people to sign up. If any of you by chance haven't, please definitely join the ANH Academy because you can see online what our community is doing. So what is it that we're doing? The IMMANA project, which is the principal source of funding and support for the ANH Academy, but not the only one. The other major one is the CGIAR program on agriculture for nutrition and health, the A4NH program, and many others also contribute enormously to the ANH Academy, particularly the host country and others for any meeting that happens in person somewhere. But what do we do? We are trying to bring together expertise across sectors. So the observation was that agriculture is siloed in a Ministry of Agriculture with its agricultural extension, agricultural research. Colleges of agriculture are separate often from a school of public health or health ministry and the health service, which in turn is separate from the discipline of dietetics and nutrition, and advising on dietary guidelines. So we wanted to bring agriculture together with health around nutrition. So the ANH community finally has an annual meeting, the ANH Academy conference, and chapters in each country, communities of practice, groups of like-minded people who can talk to each other between a veterinarian, a dietitian, and a health practitioner, for example. But we also needed specifically to measure that interaction, to come up with diet quality metrics, to come up with, I mentioned, water insecurity metrics, to come up with food system measures, such as our diet cost indicators. These are all new ways of thinking, of understanding, but above all, of guiding, of measuring so as to say whether something is improving over time or is better in one place than another, because without that metric, it's not possible for interventions to be tested as to whether they're working or not. We've had too much vagueness, too much confusion, and not enough concrete measurement to guide what we've done. I will say that there has been enormous progress in the world in this area. Children are taller, there's much lower mortality, and much greater resilience to something like COVID, which is a horrible scourge that has decimated many, many societies. But the food system and nutrition have generally responded in ways that are extremely resilient thanks to progress, but we have a lot more to do because it's clear that there's so much malnutrition remaining of all types. So people come to the ANH community from different backgrounds. So I myself come from economics. People might come from sociology, from agricultural science, from psychology, physiology, and medicine, from political science, like so many different domains of personal backgrounds. And what we're looking for is that combination of a history, a personal history of education experience that you bring, and your mentors who can guide you to contribute to this agenda in the future. So let's pause. Let's keep on this slide now, Julia. Don't advance quite yet. I'm going to show you some examples of previous projects. But before we see the slides of previous projects, I'm just curious whether anyone would like to unmute themselves and share something about the background that they come from and the type of project they'd be interested in pursuing. Does that make sense? So I'll show you some, next slide will be examples of actual projects. But if anybody would just like to say, oh, I'm interested in this, that I think would be helpful for the others on the call to get a sense of who else is joining here. We now have a total of 29 people on the call. So that's 26 potential fellows. And I hope maybe, one or two of you would, or more, would just happily unmute yourself and share what institution you're with, or what area you work in, or what kind of topic you'd like to investigate, so we can get a sense of what others are curious about.
Hi, can I go ahead if you can hear
Yes.
me? Hi, I'm Vijaya here. I think probably I come from a little bit of a different background from the others, since I have a PhD in operations research, which is more of applied math.
Hello.
But I have been mostly working on food supply chains and healthcare from an operations perspective. And that would be one question maybe which I'll ask later, whether you look at PhDs from other backgrounds too, from the more sciences. But I'm looking at more of food safety, disruption, resilience, which is obviously a huge topic now. That's what I've been working on, and I'm hoping to work on some project which looks at that. Would be my broad idea right now.
Very interesting. Yes, thanks, Vijaya. So yes, we are definitely interested in different backgrounds, such as your PhD in operations research, and very interested in food safety in particular as a dimension of ANH, which is quite well, it's well studied in some contexts, but there's tremendous amounts of new discovery to be made. I think the food safety topic that's been most researched recently is aflatoxin and mold on foods. But I think there's also a tremendous interest in many aspects of food safety. Thank you. Thanks very much. Anyone else want to share a little bit about background? Vijaya, that was a great example.
Hello, good afternoon. Good morning.
Go ahead, Olu.
Oh, good afternoon. Good morning, yeah. My name is Olusegun Fadare. I'm a doctoral candidate at the University of Reading. My research is on livestock production, consumption, and nutritional implication. I'm looking at it in the conflict context in Nigeria. I'm using the longitudinal data set from Nigeria. Then I've been looking at different measurements of livestock ownership and how we can measure this in conflict context to measure shock and resilience of the households. So yeah, I know this link together perfectly well with agriculture, nutrition, and even health because of the livestock that is involved. Yeah.
Excellent. Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. And the context of conflict-affected countries is of course tremendous interest. So much of the malnutrition in the world is really squarely due to the context, the conflict context, which of course is a terrible thing in Nigeria today. Alec, you have you've used the raised hand feature. Do go ahead, please. Thank you.
And thank you, William. Can you hear me? You can hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I'm Alex. I'm from South Africa, based at the University of KwaZulu-Natal. My PhD was on biofortification. I'm a plant breeder by training and profession, agriculture plant breeder. So my work was on biofortification of maize. So my proposal for this fellowship is on evaluating biofortify the plant or crop varieties to assess the bioavailability of the enhanced nutrients after processing. For example, after cooking, or processing the wheat or maize, then and also after cooking, and how much the nutrients that are available to people. So roughly that's what I want to look at, and I also want to check I work with Harvest Plus in Southern Africa, that is Zambia, South Africa, Zimbabwe, and those countries. That's my focus.
Very interesting. Yes. Thank you, Alex. So that's that is a classic topic. A great way to get at this ag nutrition linkage through nutrient composition and bioavailability, where the intervention is very clear. The biofortification question is top of mind for many governments, asking whether staple foods can become more nutritious, and so contributing to that, could be very exciting. And Gezahen, your hand is up.
Yeah, hello, I'm Gazan Alamayo from Addis Ababa, here working with the Early International Livestock Research Institute and Addis Ababa University. I'm working on small ruminant reproductive performance in the island of Ethiopia, which is related to the cause, the public health impacts, and also nutritional impacts, especially when there is abortion and other reproductive performance. This reduce availability of milk, because in the dry land of Ethiopia, there are more, the nutrition is coming from milk. So this reproductive problem is really affecting the milk availability, and also the production of young stock, which is used to buy grains and other materials. So how this really reproductive performance affect the nutritional diversity and nutritional access for the children's and women's, pregnant women especially. That was my topic. Thank you. Over
Excellent.
to you.
Yes, no, that's super interesting, and we do have quite a lot of work on you know, animal source foods in Ethiopia in particular because it's so important. It's very, very exciting area where that you described. Thank you. So let's just take two more, the two people whose hands are up now.
Hi,
Nikhil,
can I say
your hand
something?
first. Oh, and Sultana, you
Hello.
also want to go?
Hi, it's Sultana from UK. Good morning or good afternoon, everybody. I'm an agriculturist. I did my graduation from Bangladesh Agriculture University and then master's in plant pathology. Later on, I migrated to UK and pursued another master's in environmental assessment and management from the University of Brighton. And I did my PhD in environment. My research area was the removal of arsenic from drinking water using recycled glass. And as I am an agriculturist, there is a link with the agricultural water contamination and the toxic metal inserted to the food chain. So later on, at this moment, I'm working in a charity organization and it's like a social science based, and I'm influencing the community people for the gardening, and it's a little bit related to my research, but I'm interested to back my own PhD research and the link up with my basic degree like agricultural science. So I am interested particularly to pursue the IMMANA fellowship under the toxic metal penetration to the food chain through the agricultural activities, So I have my close connect with my previous institution from where I did my bachelor degree, Sher-e-Bangla Agriculture University in Bangladesh. So I can pursue my fellowship as a home institution there, and the host I have contacted with another supervisor in the Birmingham University in UK. So that is my, at this moment, initially I'm preparing like how the food habit and the agriculture activities can influence the food chain and the and also I would like to link up with the COVID tolerance, like what types of people are affected, whether it is the elite person, what is their food habit, and something like the similar research,
Good.
what I believe
Good.
I can do.
Excellent. Yeah, so that raises a lot of interesting questions that people have touched on in previous projects, but could be new. Arsenic and also metals as contaminants. And a big question will be trying to understand COVID resilience and COVID response. So if people have concept notes about COVID response in particular, definitely interested in hearing them, but it's not by any means a requirement. So just have the last two people who are Abiodun and Nikhil. And Nikhil, can you go first? You had your hand up.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Nikhil. I'm based in Visakhapatnam in India. I work at
So Nikhil, you just muted your, went to mute. Excellent.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I work at Public Health Foundation of India. So the government of Andhra Pradesh, where I'm based, is implementing a policy called zero budget natural farming. So I just want to understand from the farmer's perspective as to what ZBNF means to them, and also understand how they are implementing it, like looking at the fidelity of intervention or implementation by the farmers. My methods are mostly qualitative, but though I also have quantitative components, but mostly qualitative in terms of interviews with the farmers, and also observation, and also some focused ethnographic research into what do they really do in terms of doing ZBNF farming.
Fascinating, fascinating. Yeah, I think ZBNF is an astonishingly untold story. People in Europe and Africa and the US are often unaware that this is such a massive, massive turn towards zero inputs. And it would be very interesting to hear more from you about that. Abiodun?
Hi everyone, I'm Abiodun. I'm originally from Nigeria, but currently I'm a postdoc at University of Connecticut Roth Center for Food Policy. My research focused on the evaluation of different programs and policies, programs like nutrition, education, farmers market incentive program, on the impact of these in improving health equity. And also, my research examines the interactions between environment and behaviors of people. And currently, we are launching a research that is testing the feasibility of using a discovery to the technology to capture people's perception about their food environment. And we have seen that the perception of people about where they live, how things are can actually impact and improve policy. So I'm thinking of like validating this tool in Nigeria context, because I've previously done my master's in Nigeria where I focus on food insecurity and childhood malnutrition. So I'm thinking of capturing people's perception about this context using this tool.
Interesting, good. Yeah, thank you. The question of whether tools can go from high to lower middle income countries contexts, move from Asia to Africa, move from the US to Nigeria, for example, is a very interesting question about validation across contexts. So Abiodun, thank you for raising that. So let's have a look at the next slide then. Yeah, those were wonderful examples, really interesting to talk about what you're curious about now. When we look at the past topics, I want to just flag a few things. So you can read these topic descriptions faster than I can say them. So please look at the slide and read those topic descriptions. We've organized these into categories. After this slide, there's another 3 categories coming in the next slide. And I want to just pause for a second while you read those descriptions. So I'd like to say just a few things about these descriptions. So we've categorized them in terms of a broad domain, but as you will know, these domains often cross each other. So don't feel like you need to be squarely, within one category. What is very important is to be as explicit and as concrete, as particular as you can about what the thing is that you're studying, the relationship to something else, so that we typically are asking one thing and another thing, or this one thing, and the place and also the particular population with which you're working. So what we ask of you in the concept notes, and what we ask of you in your fellowship proposals, and what we ask of you in your actual projects is to look behind the general words, the broad words, the framing language, words like food environment, words like food systems, words like holistic or integrated or interdisciplinary. All those words are wonderful, but what I'd like to know, what the policymakers need to know, is what particular thing are you able to obtain actual observations of, actual data, which could be qualitative, as in a key informant interview and a focus group, or textual analysis, or photographic evidence. Those are qualitative observations. But you could also have survey data, quantitative numerical scales from a survey, or administrative data, such as a population density or market data, where you don't know the individual people, but you know the marketplace. Any kind of concrete observation, either qualitative or quantitative, where you can say exactly what is it that you observed. Farm, crop, livelihood, diversity. and then its relationship to something else of interest, typically a influence affecting an outcome of interest, and then be extremely concrete about the location and the population of interest. So I'll say that again because it's extremely important. You are often encouraged to use very general language, such as food environments or food systems, to talk about how holistic or integrated, to talk about how comprehensive or sometimes interdisciplinary or multidisciplinary, talk about how transformational or other words like that. And those are very useful words often. But what we need to know is very specifically, what do you observe? What do you see? What do you write down? What do you compute sometimes? With what data to obtain what variables, what actual things might change over time or be different in one place than another? Because without that concreteness, we can't possibly answer the question of how will this lead a government to act in a different way? How will this lead civil society or an NGO or an international development agency to meet people's needs more effectively? Our aim is to measure people's lives in a way that matters to them in terms of their nutrition, their health, their agriculture, their livestock, to measure their lives either quantitatively or qualitatively, and then obtain from that an indicator, a metric that will be of use to improve those lives. So if folks can think about where their general framing, words like food environment or food systems or interdisciplinary integrated research, think about concretely, what do they actually observe, and just describe that. It'll make a huge difference to our ability to do good work in the world. So Julia, the next slide shows another set of topics. These ones are looking, of course, within households here, and outside of households at what governments or marketplaces, companies are doing, and at what government agencies or NGOs and civil society are doing. And it's very important to emphasize that not all of our work is household survey, the total amount of something in a household. We're very interested in what's happening within households. That's this category of thing. We're very interested in what's happening at a systemic level. But when we say systems, we are asking you to write very particularly about what actual actor, what actual organization, what place and thing is changing over time or being different. And in terms of organizations that are doing interventions, extremely interested in that. So I'd like to pause for a second and ask if anyone has any questions or comments about this difference between the concrete particulars of what you actually observe and the more broad general motivation that you might have. And Julia, you could go back to the previous slide just to make sure it's clear that we are talking often about things that are happening, within a household. This is broadly speaking crops, broadly speaking livestock, and then overall metrics of diet quality or water, all the issues that have been raised in the first set of comments, as well as the next slide. You can bounce back to the previous slide if you like. Any thoughts? People would like to unmute yourself. You can use the raise hand feature if you like, and I can call on you, but you can also just unmute yourself and chat, talk out loud if you like. So this question of particulars, of being able to write concretely in your concept note about the thing which you're going to measure and the outcome of interest in a particular population. If folks have any thoughts about that, I'm happy to pause on that, or we can proceed. Good. So I think we'll proceed right to the next slide, which is what are we looking for as evidence that you are able to validate and apply these new methods in a concrete way, in a way that matters for a particular group of people. So our first criterion is the work you've done so far. So we use this phrase, demonstrated commitment, to mean what have you chosen to do with your time, with your life? What have you written? What have you accomplished? That definitely includes degree, programs and courses and so forth, but it is definitely not limited to that. So we are very interested in people's programmatic experience, with NGOs, civil society, as well as government agencies and development agencies. And we're looking for the highest possible, I would say, level of achievement in terms of the kinds of work you've been doing. We do want to be sure that this work spans the ANH mandate of bringing expertise from one silo to another. It's extremely important to recognize that this is a new area that we need to learn from each other. And so a track record of having done that is extremely valuable. If you've had your whole career inside one type of institution, that's probably not a great fit for IMMANA. It's probably not a great fit for the ANH Academy. If you've done more than one thing, you've got that demonstrated commitment to crossing those boundaries. If you have not yet crossed those boundaries between institutions, that's totally fine. Just tell us something about how you intend to do that. And it's perfectly reasonable to use the fellowship as a bridge towards some place that you haven't yet gone. So your host mentor would be the destination to which you aim to have your career trajectory move. Then, in addition to what you've done already, we're of course concerned with, is this a proposal that is very likely to achieve a high level of impact? And it has to achieve that impact very, very quickly. A year goes by very fast. And for that reason, it's almost always necessary to feature existing data and to feature prior research that you yourself have done. So in almost all cases, the concept note and then the proposal says, I have already obtained these data. I have already done this set of analyses. And here's what I will do in 12 months to build on that. Sometimes one wants to match your data that you've already collected and already analyzed with something new, either new primary data collection, that would be a new survey, new obtaining of administrative data or satellite imagery or some other kind of information. But it's often simply the analysis and the write-up. So we do have very interesting and promising proposals where there is no new data collection in the 12 months at all, but just the analysis plan for how the statistical work or the other kinds of interpretation, for example, somebody has transcripts from a lot of survey, a lot of interview and focus group transcripts, and you need to analyze that qualitatively. Or there's photographic evidence and you need to analyze that qualitatively. So an analysis plan of existing data is also very, very interesting. But the specific sort of test of whether the aims have been accomplished is whether a specific article or more than one article is submitted in the within the year. So some people actually submit something very close to the beginning because they're very, it's already done mostly, and then they move on to the next paper, the next study, the next outcome of interest. That's certainly a good thing to do. We're interested in a year that reaches new audiences with new results to validate and apply these metrics in an important way. As I keep saying over and over again, because it matters so much, the task and the criterion of impact is, can people use these data to change what they do in the world? Not how science understands the world, but how governments act on the world. Our aim is to influence government practice, international agency practice, civil society and non-governmental organizations practice, to influence the programs, the policies, any kind of intervention that could help improve people's health and nutrition and the sustainability of the ag sector. Fourth criterion is the idea of personal growth, and that our fellows are emerging leaders, are thought leaders, and also activist organizational leaders. We have a wide range of fellows in this regard. Some individuals are very academic, very scholarly, and they do have an impact on the world, but it's through their ideas, through their writing. Other fellows are engaged directly with a constituency, an audience, a group of beneficiaries, a group of stakeholders, and they're acting directly with people in a program setting. We have fellows after their fellowship working at the highest levels of international organizations, such as the World Bank, and we have fellows who are working in national government programs, such as someone on the call mentioned, Ethiopian Public Health Institute, national public health institutes elsewhere, as well as government organizations and colleges and universities. And then last but definitely not least, we are very concerned about the identity and the commitment of your mentors and of the institutions in which you plan to work. Please be sure that your relationship to the mentor, it could be someone you've never met before, who's agreed to support you because they think your work is promising, but that needs to be credible. It needs to be something that is a demonstrated commitment of that mentor to do that kind of work. Because we have had proposals in the past where the mentor relationship doesn't seem very credible. It's hard to believe that that person would really make an effort to help the fellow in their career development. So there are many ways to make sure that your relationship to the mentor is a credible one, is one that we can really trust and believe. But the primary thing is just choosing a mentor and an institutional relationship where there's a track record of this kind of work, so that you can say that that mentor previously did work in this domain in a particular way, and that is evidence that they're likely to continue. So I hope that those criteria are clear, that they're straightforward, and above all, that formulating your concept notes and then your actual proposals is very valuable for you, even if you don't obtain a fellowship. Why is that? Because we believe that these criteria are often your criteria, that these criteria help to concentrate the mind and help you think through the next steps of your own careers in general. And if you can do that through a fellowship, that's really great. But even if you don't do it through a fellowship, you can use this conversation right now today, but also the process of thinking about a concept note and a proposal, you can use that in other steps of your careers. So we're about an hour into the call. We're going to transition next to the application process, sort of mechanically. But if anybody would like, not mechanically, I mean in writing, if anybody would like to unmute themselves and share some thoughts on the criteria, happy to pause now about that. If not, Julia, you could go to the next slide. And Haley, do you want to share about the application process and your experience in terms of the outreach?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Will. And thank you for that really interesting overview of the scope and aims of the fellowship. Hi all, my name is Hallie Perlich. I've been administering these fellowships at Tufts University since 2018. And as Will mentioned, we have a lot of experience administering these. And so we are happy to share that experience and help you strengthen your application. So as you can see on this slide, we aim to advertise the fellowships as widely as possible in order to recruit a diverse pool of applications, specialties, and experience. So I don't need to read all that, but you can see sort of the scope of the recruitment of our candidates there. I won't take too much time on this slide, but the main takeaway is that all of the information related to the application process is found on our website, which you can see a screenshot of here on this slide. And you have probably already visited to register for this webinar. On our website, you'll find the call for applications document that details everything that we've discussed so far in this call, as well as many more details. I'm sure that the majority of you have read that already, but if you have not, please do visit our website and take a look at that. It contains eligibility requirements, information about how to apply, links to our application portal, etc. If you have any questions that are not answered in the call for applications document, and I would remind you to please not miss the frequently asked questions at the end of the document, you can always email us at immanafellowships@tufts.edu. And if you wouldn't mind, maybe Julia, you could drop that email address in the chat box for folks. That would be great. One more thing to note here is that you can also visit our website to view information about past fellowship projects. These are some of the illustrative topics that Will was speaking about a few minutes ago. And you can see in this screenshot on the top right corner of your screen, we have links for the different rounds of fellowships that we've done so far. We'll also post this recording, recording of this webinar on the website in the coming days. So Julia, if you wouldn't mind the next slide, please. Here we'll talk a little bit about the timeline for fellowship applications. We are now in step one of what is, for some people, a two-stage application process. We are currently accepting concept notes for review and feedback. It's worth noting that a concept note is not required to be eligible to apply and submit a full application. The concept notes are simply a resource for you to send us an abstract of your idea, and we can give you feedback that you can then integrate into a full proposal. Please note that this is different from the IMMANA grants workstream, with which some of you may be familiar. The grants workstream does require submission of a concept note. The fellowships does not. If you do choose to submit a fellowship concept note, we will be accepting those until the end of December this year. And we do provide feedback on a rolling basis. So feel free to get that in early for us. And you will get feedback no later than January 15th. So our applications, once all of the full applications are submitted at the beginning of February, are reviewed and scored by an independent panel, and we select 6 applicants as well as 2 to 3 alternates. Candidates are notified in April of their selection and are expected to begin their work sometime between the 1st of June and the 1st of December each year. So one thing that, as Will described, given the broad scope and aims of this fellowship, we've adapted a similarly flexible administrative and financial system. So you can see the financial value of the fellowships at the bottom of this slide. And we administer this differently from other funding opportunities you may be familiar with. We do not track the financial expenditure of your project. We leave that up to you. And we simply use a mechanism of quarterly progress reports to initiate lump sum payments to you as an individual researcher. We do ask that you submit a budget and a work plan or timeline as part of your application, and this is an effort to evaluate the realistic feasibility of your application, one of the criteria that Will was speaking about on the last slide. And we've been reviewing applications and administering these fellowships for quite a few years now, so we do have a wide breadth of experience in assessing the financial and timeline feasibility of your project, which is why we ask for these two elements. Finally, as you'll see on this slide, each of our fellows has the opportunity and is expected to present their project either as a postal or oral presentation at the ANH Academy Week conference each year, and this will be the year that they are an active fellow. So I'll let Julia speak about other ongoing engagements that we do with our fellows in a moment, but that was a lot of information in a short period of time, so I'll pause here. If anyone has any specific questions, feel free to unmute yourself or raise your hand.
We've tried to set this up in a very clear way, so if there are no questions, that's a testament to Haley having set this up in a way that and communicating it really clearly. So thank you.
Sure. So if there are no questions, Julia, go ahead.
Thank you, Hallie and Will, for the great explanation of background of the fellowship and the timeline. So although, just to introduce myself again, as Will mentioned in the beginning, I'm Julia Madison. I'm the project coordinator for the fellowship program, and I will be the main person to engage with you regarding all administrative processes, fellowship payments, answer any questions you may have as well. So, and I'll also be responding to the IMMANA Fellowships email. So I recognize a few of your names here today that have already emailed me. So thank you for reaching out. So although the fellowship year will mainly be focused on your research and your work, there are a few opportunities for engagement with the rest of your fellowship cohort. This year, for example, we have done a series of webinars around the research process, 3 different webinars where our past and current fellows have gotten together to discuss different topics related to research design and funding, and just an opportunity to share and engage with one another on a quarterly basis. And that's been a really great experience so far. So something that we will most likely continue in this next round of fellowships for round 6. And then another great opportunity for connection, although this year it may be virtual again, but still a great opportunity to connect with the whole ANH Academy community, and the IMMANA program as well is ANH Academy Week, which offers an opportunity for the ANH Academy to get together through learning labs and webinars, presentations, and posters, dialogues to discuss all things agriculture, nutrition, and health. So that will be an opportunity for fellows to engage with each other and listen to those presentations, and hopefully get a really rich experience, although it may be online this year again. But we as a program have gotten really great at online engagement. So really feeling like we can connect via Zoom has been really important for us. So I won't take too much of your time on this, as I'm sure I see the chat box has a lot of questions. So if that's all from me. So if we want to jump right into questions, here is again our contact information. Again, I will be answering the IMMANA Fellowships at tufts.edu email address. So please reach out if you think of any questions after this webinar. And again, as Hallie mentioned, visit us online at our website, as I'm sure many of you already have. And please go through the call for applications and pay attention to those frequently asked questions as well. So if there are any remaining questions, please definitely let us know and we're happy to answer.
That's great. Alma mentioned in the chat box that she had a thought. Alma Baptist, do you want to share out loud?
Yes. Yeah, hi everyone. Firstly, thank you for the presentation, very clear and helped solve all my queries that I had in mind. But I have a couple of questions. First question is regarding the existing data set that was written in the criteria for selection. Can you have that slide? I just wanted to confirm that the applicant has to be like the existing data is something that applicant has collected, or is it okay to use publicly available data?
Excellent question. Yes, definitely okay to use public data. I would add that most discovery, in my experience, really comes from combining data, right? And so often you're combining two sets of data or mixing one thing with another in order to compare or contrast. So publicly available data is often a real gold mine of interesting and useful materials. So I definitely encourage people to make use of that. Thank you. Great question.
I have one more question. This is regarding the mentors. Now, the home mentor, does the applicant need to be working in the same institute? Do you have to be affiliated or hold a position in that institute?
Excellent question also. No, there's no specification of exactly what these relationships are. The words are deliberately a little vague in order to communicate that we are interested in this transition, this movement from a home to a host, right? The words are intended to convey the idea that you went from something to something else in your career trajectory. So most of the time, the home mentor is your current boss. Not most of the time, maybe a lot of the time. I don't know exactly what fraction, but quite significant amount of the proposals are someone's home mentor is their current supervisor, but by no means always. And it could be an institution where you're not even working there. So you could be in one institution, your home mentor is somewhere else, and your host mentor a different place entirely.
Okay, so there was a requirement of some documentation from the institution I read on the website. So
yes,
that's I was getting a little confused.
Very, very good to raise that. So this is one of the numerous questions that are in the frequently asked questions, the FAQ section of the call. And the FAQ section is exactly what it's called, frequently asked questions. These are things that happened in the past that raised a concern or a doubt. And so we are simply echoing the issues that arose in the past. So what arose in the past is that people have had conflicting obligations. So in this fellowship year, we do not expect you to give up all of your ongoing work, whether that's teaching, whether that's program implementation in the organization you work in, or some other kind of employment that you have. We just ask that it be explicit. And we want it to be explicit because it's often extremely valuable and useful and really helps fulfill the aims of the program. For example, if you are now working in a National Public Health Institute on COVID resilience and response, we want to know what is your role in COVID response so that we can then evaluate whether your fellowship year would be a good complement to that. Similarly, many applicants are teaching, so they have to continue teaching, and we just want to know that. Now, your home institution will probably have rules about your employment.
Yeah, that's
very important. So you must ensure that you are in compliance with your national tax regulations, with your visa obligations in terms of the location you're working at, and with your ethical permissions for the institution where you are, the ethical review boards, the institute, and of course also with the employment regulations that you are working under. It's very, very important that we understand and know that you are in compliance with all of those requirements of other people. Our only requirement is that you be transparent about it.
Okay. Yes,
So
yes.
we definitely welcome inquiries from people with other obligations so that we know. So we call that a conflict of commitment, a potential conflict of commitment, right? If you said you would spend your time doing two different things, that's not possible. So we would, but it's very important to emphasize that our program is one that aims to be additional to what you are already doing and would do, to complement, to add to it in a way that helps achieve our program goals, but in almost all cases also helps achieve the institutional goals of your current or future employer.
Yeah. Okay, I have one more question. Then we can discuss others also. So I am from India and I have just submitted my PhD thesis in the month of July and I'm awaiting my Viva. But it's already been 3 months and the process here, in the government institutes is a little slow. So I'm hopeful it's done before I submit my application. But in case it isn't, maybe my Viva comes up in April or May, will that affect my, application in the sense, will I still be allowed to apply for it? Is in, the eligibility criteria?
Yes, very important. Haley's nodding because this is an issue that keeps coming up, right? But do you want to say, Haley?
Yeah, sure. So the requirement, and part of the reason that you'll notice we have such a wide range of start dates available. I mentioned that you can start your fellowship anywhere from the 1st of June to the 1st of December. For this round, it will be of 2021. One of the reasons for that is precisely this. We know that folks are often finishing their degrees, and this process of actually obtaining your doctoral or terminal degree can be lengthy. And so we do accept and encourage applicants who are in the final processes of receiving their terminal degree to apply. And that's the reason that we have such a wide range of start dates, is because our only requirement is that you have your degree in hand when you start the fellowship. So if you were, for example, as you mentioned, potentially looking at April or May, that would be totally fine because you would only need to have it somewhere between the 1st of June and the 1st of December.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Sure. And there's, Will, there's a great question in the chat box about maybe you could speak about how to find a host mentor and
Excellent.
sort of some processes for that.
Very good, yeah. And then I'll call on Mohammed and Olusegun as well. So regarding finding a host mentor, I think the best place to start is people who have published on the questions you want to work with, on the data you want to use, on the methods you want to use, and on the population, the questions that you're addressing. So you would look in Google Scholar, scholar.google.com, and just enter the search term. And if people, and you can limit the years to publications that have appeared in the last, say, 5 years, and you can ask, has anyone written anything? And then you can write to that person and say, I read this paper, I thought it was very interesting, I would like to do that type of work, and you want to be concrete and specific and say, I want to use that particular sort of data with that method and that question of interest, and ask them if they're interested. And if they respond, and if they have a track record of supporting people like yourself, then that would be a perfectly appropriate mentor relationship, even if you've never met them before. So step 1 is a Google Scholar search. Step 2 is a network approach, where you look in LinkedIn, you look in the faculty of institutions that you're interested in working in, at the lists of people, and you write them an email. Even if you haven't published anything, maybe they're a good mentor because they have a job description that fits what you need. So it's either a literature search, say through Google Scholar, or a network approach where you're looking for lists of people and send them an email. In both cases, you don't have to have a pre-existing relationship, but if they have a track record of helping people like you, then we have confidence that it can be a very good relationship, even if you've never actually met before. And Bayene asks, can your previous PhD mentor be a host mentor? Yes, but our term for that is home, because that's where you're coming from. We're using the word home, in the sense of where you're from, as opposed to where you're going, which is your host. And Sultana asks, is there time limitation about time? No, none at all. So many projects, especially in the COVID era, involve no travel at all. Other projects, of course, have more travel. And then, so Mohammed, you have your hand up.
Yeah, hi, Williams. Thanks for the presentation. My question is, considering that existing data is preferred for this round, so what if someone is interested in, say, start collecting the data as soon as possible, say from next month, just so that he's able to clear a lot of the, reduce the workload. So how would one factor that aspect in the application?
That's a very good question. Yeah, ongoing data collection can be very good evidence of a demonstrated commitment and a feasibility, right? We're asking for those two things. Something that is promising. How do we know it's promising? Well, because you've started doing it already. The problem with new data is you don't know what you don't know about data quality, right? You can't yet be sure that it's actually informative, because a lot of data is just noise. And so it would be helpful if you do have ongoing data collection and you want to feature that in the proposal, just to make sure in your concept note, in your proposal, you clearly explain, I'm doing this ongoing data collection, and here are the data quality checks. Here's the assessment I've been doing to give me confidence that the data I'm collecting are valid and useful, as opposed to just random noise. Does that make sense? So if you can communicate a little bit about the data you've already got and the validity, the usefulness of those data, that would be very clear evidence of the feasibility of what you're talking about.
That's quite helpful. Thanks.
And Olusegun?
Okay, thank you very much. Some of the questions I had in mind have been answered while waiting, so thank you for that. My other question is to know if it's a requirement for an applicant to have a physical presence in the host country, especially when the data being used is secondary. Must you be in the host country before, during the period of the fellowship? Yeah.
Yeah, that's a very, very important question. So in other projects, there's a lot of focus on exactly where you are and your nationality and other things, and we don't have those requirements. So you do not need to be physically present in the country you're working on or in the population you're working on. We don't think this is a matter of your personal experience so much as a matter of the observations you're working with, the data that you're working with. It's entirely possible to write a very, very important paper study about a country, even if you're not there physically yourself, about people you may not have met. The problem is simply to demonstrate your understanding of their circumstances, demonstrate why you are the right person to do that study. So if you're going to be not physically located there, just to make sure that your concept note in your proposal says these data are valid, these observations reflect the experience of these people because the data were collected in a way that is known to be representative of their lived experience. So you do not need to be physically present, but you do need to demonstrate the relevance of what you want to do to their actual lives.
Okay, thank you very much. Another question is just a quick one. Is what the level of the quality of the data you have to show in your proposal, at what quality level do you need to show all the maybe summary statistics of the data you already have?
So yes, in proposals, the majority of proposals that fall short of our aspirations of what we want to see, when proposals fall short, it's usually because they're too vague. They don't share enough detail. We very rarely get proposals that give too much detail. I could imagine giving too much detail, but I haven't seen it. So I would encourage you to share descriptive statistics, a table of descriptive statistics as you just suggested. I think that could be a very good idea.
Okay.
We do have proposals that do that, that could have multiple tables in them. You can't have a very large table, so you need to be very limited in what you're uploading. But if you can demonstrate that the data you collected have validity with respect to some other criterion, I think a table of descriptive statistics could be very, very helpful. What we're mainly concerned about is the usual questions of who are the people who were observed, what exactly was observed, what are the variables, how many people, under what circumstances, in what time frame, and what is the quality of the observations.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much. That's all.
Excellent. Thank you. So we have another 5 minutes or so for this. If anyone has any other questions, happy to talk more. But as you know, the email address, imanafellowships@tufts.edu. We did have a technical glitch with it briefly, but in general, Julia is able to respond very, very quickly and forward to me any inquiries. And I hope that the FAQs in the call for proposals provide very good explanations of most questions. Alma, do you want to talk again? Thanks.
Yeah, I have just one more question. I went to the website, IMANA's website, and previous proposals, and there is one proposal which was very qualitative narrative. It is the study about the history of maize. So I wanted to know, is that still because the goal of IMANA now, as you said, was more about validating. So is such type of work still relevant as an applicant, as a proposal?
That's a great question. The answer is I don't know in general. I think it's impossible to say sort of in general, would it be attractive? I think it's certainly possible. But it is a correct observation that the UK aid, especially the British funding for this project, is, I can say, increasingly impatient for more concrete evidence. Is that fair? At the beginning, they were more open-minded. I mean, they're still very open-minded, but they were more patient, I can say, more interested in exploratory investigations. And now there is much more interest in, okay, can we demonstrate that the IMANA fellowships are giving us a research paper, published paper, but also an individual who can provide concrete measurement.
All right. And one just last question, let's say that there are many tools which are developed in one particular population, but not validated or used in other populations. So here we are not developing a tool, we are sort of validating it in a population. Is that in line with the goals of IMANA?
Absolutely, very much so, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, because that's exactly the question that people are most concerned about in the UK aid community, and also Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation as well. They're putting hundreds of millions of dollars into programs, and doing advisory work. For example, the UN Food Systems Summit coming up next year, and that question of external validity, taking a measure from one place and asking, does it work elsewhere, is extremely important. Thank you for raising that.
Okay, thank you.
Good, so I really appreciate all of you for joining us today, for your interest in the project, and for the work that you're doing. I'm sure that each and every one of you in your own domains are doing exciting kinds of things that I hope when you see the ANH Academy website, you think, these are my people, these are my colleagues, my potential collaborators, that we can forge connections between each of us, you know, to some degree with ourselves at Tufts University, with the other leadership of the IMMANA project at London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine, at the other universities in the UK, but above all, especially amongst yourselves, amongst people within your country. I know that we have already, the ANH Academy has already sparked a lot of collaboration in the countries where we've had meetings, where we have particularly dense networks in Ethiopia, in Ghana, in Nepal, and in India, lots of people connected to each other, and that, you know, those of you on the call, that you will see through the ANH Academy website other people in your country. I would hope that you register at the ANH Academy site to be a member of the Academy and receive the newsletter, and also sign up for the Ag to Newt community of practice email list within the ANH Academy, because that is an opportunity to engage with practitioners in the community of practice as well. So we will expect to hear from you through a concept note, through email, and so forth over the coming weeks. You don't need to, you can just proceed directly to a proposal, and we look forward to hearing from you in the weeks ahead. Haley and Julia, any last comments?
Not from me, thanks, Will. I'm happy to hang out on the line for a couple more minutes if folks want to ask more questions. I have time to stay on the line a few minutes.
Good.
Yeah, and same for me. Thank you all so much for joining. And please note that we also have another webinar scheduled a month from now on November 30th. So if you have any remaining questions or have colleagues or other connections that are interested, please also note that there will be one more the same time a month from now. Thank you.
Fantastic, thank you. So I'll close out the recording now, but you can stay on the line and chat if you'd like. Thanks so much for joining.
Okay, thank you.